The year was 2387, and the galaxy was dying. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of Earth Station Alpha, watching the last Confederation transport ships prepare for departure. Through the thick glass, he could see the massive vessels hovering in space like silver mountains. Each ship carried thousands of aliens from dozens of different worlds. They were all leaving. Every single one of them. The Devourers had awakened 3 months ago. Ancient creatures from the center of the galaxy, older than most stars, hungrier than black holes. They ate everything in their path. Planets, stars, even the space between them. The scientists said they turned matter into dark energy, whatever that meant. All Marcus knew was that they were coming and nothing could stop them. The Alien Council had made their choice. Run or die. Simple as that. Marcus pressed his hand against the cold glass and watched another transport ship vanish into the swirling blue light of a wormhole gate. The Zephyrians were leaving now. He had worked with them for 15 years, fought alongside them in the border wars, shared drinks with their captains in stations across the outer rim. Now they were gone without even saying goodbye. Behind him, the elevator doors opened with a soft hiss. Sarah Chun walked onto the observation deck, her uniform crisped despite the long day of meetings. She was younger than Marcus, only 35, but she had the kind of steady eyes that made people trust her. Right now, those eyes looked tired. "The council meeting is over," she said, stopping beside him at the window. "They want our answer in 6 hours. 6 hours to decide the fate of humanity," Marcus said. He did not turn around. Another ship was leaving. The crystalline vessels of the architects this time, their surfaces catching starlight like frozen lightning. What did they offer us? Transport for 50 million humans. Technical specialists, scientists, engineers. The best and brightest, they called it. Sarah's voice was flat. They said we should be grateful. Most species only get 10% of their population evacuated. 50 million out of 12 billion. Marcus finally turned to face her. They want us to choose who lives and who dies. The selection process would be fair, they said, based on genetic diversity and skill sets. No politics, no favoritism. Sarah walked to the other side of the observation deck, where Earth hung in the darkness like a blue and white jewel. Ambassador Vexthal seemed to think he was being generous. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Generous, right. And what about the other 11,950,000,000 humans? What about the elderly, the children, the sick? The ones who aren't smart enough or useful enough to deserve a seat on their perfect ships? They didn't say. I don't think they care. The two humans stood in silence for a long moment, watching their home planet turn slowly in the void. Somewhere down there, 12 billion people were living their lives, going to work, raising families, falling in love, dreaming of the future. Most of them did not even know about the Devourers yet. The council had decided to keep it quiet to prevent panic. There's something else, Sarah said. I talked to some of the other species privately, the ones that aren't on the main council. They're scared, Marcus, really scared. The Confederation is only taking the useful ones from their worlds too. They're leaving billions behind. How many? We don't know exactly. But Dr. Yates ran some numbers based on the ship capacities and passenger manifests. Maybe 1 trillion beings are being left behind across the galaxy. Maybe more. 1 trillion lives. The number was too big to understand. Marcus tried to picture it and failed. He could barely understand 12 billion humans, let alone 1 trillion alien beings scattered across hundreds of worlds. The Devourers will reach the outer rim in about 80 years, Sarah continued. The inner systems have maybe a century after that. The Council thinks they can build more wormhole gates in Andromeda, start fresh in a new galaxy. Leave all this behind. And if the Devourers follow them there? Then they'll run again, and again, forever, if they have to. Marcus walked back to the window. The transport ships were still leaving, one after another, carrying the chosen few to safety while abandoning everyone else. It made him sick. These were the same aliens who had talked about honor and duty and the bonds between civilized species. Now they were running like frightened children, saving only themselves. Have you decided what you're going to tell the council? Sarah asked. Marcus was quiet for a long time. He thought about his daughter Emma, safe in her apartment in New Geneva. She was a teacher, not a scientist or engineer. Under the alien selection criteria, she would not qualify for evacuation. He thought about his neighbors, his friends, the billions of humans who would never get a chance to see the stars of another galaxy. I'm going to tell them no, he said finally. Sarah nodded like she had expected this answer. The whole Security Council agrees with you. So does President Martinez. We took a vote after the aliens left the meeting. It was unanimous. Unanimous? Marcus was surprised. He had expected at least some debate. General Morrison said it best. If we abandon our people now, what's the point of surviving? We wouldn't be human anymore. We'd just be another species of cowards running from the darkness. Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen. He was not alone in this. What about the civilians? The ones who want to go? We'll put it to a global vote. Every human gets to choose. Stay and fight, or take a chance on the evacuation ships. But if we're doing this, we're doing it as a species. No one gets left behind because they're not useful enough. The aliens won't like that. They'll say we're being emotional, illogical. Let them. They're not human. They don't understand. Another ship disappeared into the wormhole. This one carried the ethereals, beings of pure energy who had been among the first to discover faster-than-light travel. Even they were running. Marcus wondered if there was anyone in the galaxy with enough courage to stand and fight. Sarah, you know what this means, right? If we stay, we die, all of us. The Devourers can't be stopped. Every simulation, every projection, every analysis says the same thing. The galaxy is finished. I know, her voice was steady. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that someone has to try. Someone has to say that the lives of the weak and the old and the ordinary matter just as much as the lives of the brilliant and the strong. Even if it's hopeless? Especially if it's hopeless, Marcus looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them the Devourers were feeding, growing stronger with every world they consumed. In 80 years they would reach Earth, maybe sooner. There was no way to stop them with conventional weapons. The greatest military minds in the galaxy had already tried and failed. But Sarah was right. Someone had to stand. Someone had to care about the ones being left behind. If humanity died, at least they would die as themselves. Not as refugees dependent on alien charity, but as protectors of their own. When do we make the announcement? He asked. Tomorrow morning? President. Martinez wants to address the planet personally. The aliens get their answer at the same time as everyone else. They'll think we're insane, probably. But we've never cared much what aliens think of us anyway. Marcus smiled for the first time that day. It was true. Humans had always been the odd ones out in the Confederation. Too emotional, too stubborn, too willing to fight for lost causes. The other species found them unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. Now that unpredictability might be their greatest strength. There's one more thing, Sarah said. Intelligence reports that not all the alien refugees are making it to the evacuation ships. Some species are only taking their best and leaving the rest. Others are abandoning entire colonies that are too far away or too difficult to reach. How many? We don't know yet. But there are probably millions of aliens scattered across the galaxy who are being left behind just like our people would be. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Not hope exactly, but purpose. If we're staying, we should find them. Help them if we can. That's what I was thinking. We might not be able to stop the Devourers, but we can make sure that no one dies alone. The last of the major transport ships was preparing to leave. Marcus could see the Confederation flag. Painted on its hull, the symbol of unity between species that was about to become meaningless. Tomorrow, humanity would be alone in a dying galaxy. But they would not be helpless. Sarah, start putting together a list of every ship, every station, every piece of equipment the aliens are leaving behind. If we're going to do this, we'll need everything we can get? Already working on it. Dr. Patel thinks we can retrofit most of their technology for human use. It'll take time, but we might be able to build a real fleet. And the wormhole gates? The aliens are destroying them. As they leave, they don't want the Devourers to follow. But some of the smaller gates might survive. We could use them for travel within the galaxy, Marcus nodded. It was not much, but it was a start. Humanity had always been good at making something out of nothing. They had gone from wooden ships to starships in less than 1,000 years. Maybe they could find a way to fight cosmic horrors too. The last transport ship disappeared into the wormhole. The gate flickered and collapsed, leaving only empty space where it had been. The aliens were gone. The galaxy belonged to the Devourers now, and to the humans who refused to abandon it. Well, Marcus said, watching the stars. I guess we'd better get to work, Sarah smiled. Welcome to the end of the world, Admiral. Try to make it count. Tomorrow, humanity would begin the impossible task of protecting a galaxy that had already given up on itself. They would fail, probably, but they would fail as heroes, not as cowards. And maybe, just maybe, they would find a way to save some of the ones who had been left behind. After all, someone had to try. 3 years had passed since the Great Abandonment. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the TRS Defiance, watching the ice-covered planet below through the main view screen. The world looked dead from space, just another frozen rock in a system that should have been empty. But the scanners told a different story. I'm reading life signs, reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. Thousands of them, maybe more. They're deep underground. Sarah nodded. This was the 15th world they had checked in the past 6 months. The pattern was always the same. Worlds that the Confederation databases said were evacuated still had people living on them. People who had been forgotten or left behind or simply never told that evacuation was even happening. Any response to our signals? Sarah asked. Negative, Captain. But the power readings suggest they have working technology down there. They might just be afraid to answer. Sarah did not blame them. Unknown ships appearing in orbit usually meant trouble. She had learned that lesson the hard way during their first rescue mission, when a group of terrified Arcturian miners had tried to shoot down their shuttle thinking they were pirates. Take us into the atmosphere, Sarah ordered. Slow and steady. I want them to see that we're not here to hurt anyone. The Defiance descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. Ice crystals scraped against the hull like tiny claws. Through the swirling snow, Sarah could see the dark openings of cave systems carved into the mountainsides. Lights flickered in some of them. Someone was definitely alive down there? The ship? Settled onto a flat area near the largest cave opening. Sarah could see figures moving in the shadows just inside the cave mouth. They looked strange, even for aliens. Their bodies seemed to shimmer and change color as they moved. Crystalline beings, said Dr. Martinez, the ship's xenobiologist. He was studying the readings on his tablet with excitement. I've never seen anything like this. Their entire body structure appears to be silicon-based, but they're generating some kind of harmonic frequency. Are they dangerous? Sarah asked. I don't think so. The frequency seems to be how they communicate. It's almost like they're singing. To each other, Sarah made her decision. You're with me, Doctor. Kim, you have the bridge. If anything goes wrong, get the ship to safety. Don't try to rescue us. Yes, Captain? Sarah and Dr. Martinez put on their environmental suits and made their way to the shuttle bay. The Defiance carried 3 shuttles, all of them rebuilt from salvaged alien technology. Nothing matched, but everything worked. That had become humanity's motto over the past 3 years. Make it work, no matter what. The shuttle trip to the cave was short but bumpy. The wind on this world never stopped blowing, and the snow was so thick it was like flying through static. Sarah set the shuttle down just outside the cave opening and powered down the engines. The crystalline beings were waiting for them, up close. They were beautiful in a way that made Sarah's chest tight. Their bodies were made of what looked like living crystal, constantly shifting between different colors. Blue for curiosity, she realized, red for fear, yellow for excitement. They were talking to each other in musical tones that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The largest of them stepped forward. It was nearly 8 feet tall, its crystal body reflecting the shuttle's lights in rainbow patterns. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English, though the voice sounded like singing. "You are humans," it said. "We did not expect humans to come. We're here to help," Sarah said, keeping her hands visible and her voice calm. "We know the other species left. We stayed behind to find anyone who was abandoned." The crystal being's color shifted to deep purple. Sadness, Sarah guessed. "The collectors came 60 rotations ago. They said we were too slow to be useful." "They," said our kind, thinks too much and acts too little. "They took the young ones who could change shape quickly. They left the rest of us." Sarah felt anger building in her chest. The same story, over and over again. The strong taken, the weak abandoned. "How many of you are there?" 7,000 in this sanctuary. Perhaps 10,000 more in other sanctuaries across the world. We are all that remains of the crystalline collective. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, his scanner beeping softly. "Your harmonic frequency is fascinating. Is it how you process information?" The being's color shifted to bright yellow. "You understand. Yes, we think in harmonies. When many of us sing together, we can solve problems that would take individual minds many lifetimes. But the collectors said this made us too slow for their evacuation schedule." "We have time," Sarah said. "That's one thing we have plenty of. The Devourers won't reach this sector for another 70 years. You know of the Devourers?" The crystal being's color went to deep red. "The collectors said they were unstoppable, that nothing could fight them and survive. Maybe they're right, but we're going to try anyway. And we're not leaving anyone behind while we do it." The being was quiet for a long moment, its color cycling through different shades as it thought. Other crystal beings had gathered around them, their combined harmonics creating a complex melody that seemed to speak of hope and fear and desperate longing. Finally, the large being spoke again. "I am resonance of deep waters. I speak for this sanctuary. If you truly mean to help us, we will listen." "We have ships," Sarah said. "Not many, and they're not pretty, but they work. We can take you somewhere safer. Somewhere closer to other survivors." "Other survivors?" Resonance of deep waters shifted to bright blue. "There are others who were left behind? Thousands of them, maybe millions. We found settlements of elderly Zephyrians whose families said they were too frail to travel. Tree groves where the tree people refused to leave their sacred forests. Mining colonies that were too far from the main trade routes to be contacted in time." Dr. Martinez pulled out his tablet and showed them pictures from their previous rescue missions. "We're building a network of safe worlds in the Kepler sector, planets that are far enough from the Devourer's path to buy us time, but close enough to each other for mutual support." Resonance of deep water's color went to white, which Sarah had learned meant deep thought. The other crystalline beings joined their voices to it in a complex harmony that lasted several minutes. Sarah waited patiently. She had learned that rushing aliens never worked. Everyone had their own way of making decisions. Finally, the harmony ended. "We will come with you," Resonance of Deep Waters said, "but we ask for something in return." "What?" "Let us help. Our harmonics can process vast amounts of information very quickly. We can help you find more survivors, calculate safe routes between worlds, predict the Devourer's movements. Do not treat us as refugees. Treat us as allies." Sarah smiled. This was why she loved this job. Every species they rescued brought something valuable to their growing alliance. The Zephyrians had contributed their knowledge of atmospheric engineering. The Treants shared their biotechnology. Now the Crystalline Collective offered their incredible computational abilities. "Deal," she said, extending her hand. Resonance of Deep Waters touched her gloved hand with one crystal finger. Where they made contact, Sarah heard a brief, beautiful note that seemed to resonate in her bones. "This is how we seal agreements," the being explained. "Now we are connected. We will always be able to find each other, no matter how far apart we are. The evacuation took 2 weeks. The crystalline beings had built their sanctuaries deep in the planet's crust, connected by tunnels that had taken them centuries to carve. They had art galleries filled with structures that sang when the wind passed through them. Libraries where information was stored as crystalline formations that could be read by touching them. Gardens where they grew silicon-based plants that bloomed in geometric patterns. Sarah walked through the sanctuaries with wonder. This was a civilization that had existed for thousands of years, and the Confederation had written them off as too slow to be worth saving. It made her sick. "Captain," Dr. Martinez said, finding her in one of the art galleries. "You need to see this." He led her to a chamber she had not visited before. The walls were covered with crystal formations that pulsed with soft light, but these were not decorative. They were maps. "They've been tracking the Devourers for the past 3 years," Dr. Martinez explained. "Their harmonic network lets them sense disturbances in space-time from incredible distances. Captain, they know exactly where the Devourers are and where they're going." Sarah studied the crystal maps. Points of darkness moved slowly across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. But the patterns were not random. The Devourers were following specific routes, avoiding certain areas, circling back to revisit some regions they had already consumed. They're intelligent, she realized. This isn't just mindless destruction. They're hunting systematically. Resonance of deep waters entered the chamber, its color shifting to orange, which Sarah had learned meant urgency. "You understand correctly, Captain Chun. The Devourers are not mere forces of nature. They plan, they think, they remember." "What are they looking for? We do not know. But our harmonics suggest they are seeking something specific. Something that exists in multiple locations across the galaxy. When they find it in one place, they move to the next." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's cold atmosphere. An intelligent enemy was much worse than a mindless force of nature. It meant the Devourers could change tactics, set traps, maybe even communicate. "How long before they reached the Kepler sector?" she asked. Resonance of Deep Waters consulted the crystal maps, its body cycling through several colors as it calculated. "If they maintain their current pattern, 73 years, 4 months, 18 days, that's more specific than our best computers predicted. Our harmonics are very precise. We can track their movements down to individual star systems. If needed." Sarah felt excitement building. This changed everything. With accurate predictions of the Devourers' movements, they could plan their rescue operations much more efficiently. They could evacuate worlds years before the Devourers arrived. Instead of racing against time, Resonance of Deep Waters, how would you like to help coordinate all the rescue operations in this sector? The being's color shifted to brilliant gold. Joy, Sarah had learned. "We would be honored, Captain Chun. Our people have spent too long hiding in caves, waiting for death. It is time to sing our songs for the living again." By the time the last shuttle lifted off from the ice world, Sarah had a new appreciation for what they were building. It was not just a collection of refugees. It was an alliance of the abandoned, each species contributing their unique strengths to a common cause. The Defiance jumped to hyperspace carrying 7,000 crystalline beings toward their new home in the Kepler sector, but more importantly, it carried hope. For the first time since the Great Abandonment, Sarah began to believe they might actually be able to save everyone who had been left behind. The Devourers were still coming, but now humanity and its allies would be ready for them. In the crystal maps stored in the ship's cargo bay, new harmonics were already forming. Plans within plans, songs of survival and defiance that would echo across the galaxy. The last of them still breathed, and they were learning to sing together. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the ruins of the Confederation Research Station Omega, breathing recycled air through his environmental suit. The station had been abandoned for 5 years now, left to drift in empty space when the aliens fled to Andromeda. But the humans had found it, and what they discovered inside changed everything. "Are you seeing this?" Webb asked into his communicator, staring at the massive chamber in front of him. The walls were lined with containment units, each one marked with warning symbols in a dozen different alien languages. Red lights blinked ominously above each unit. "We're seeing it," came the voice of Admiral Kane from the exploration ship Prometheus. "What exactly are we looking at, Doctor?" Webb approached the nearest containment unit and read the label. Even with his translation software, the words made his blood run cold. Temporal disruption device. Classification. Forbiddance. Warning. Use may result in causality paradox and universal collapse. He moved to the next unit, reality anchor. Classification. Forbiddance. Warning. Improper activation may tear holes in spacetime. And the next. Nova Bomb Mark 7. Classification. Forbiddance. Warning, single device capable of destroying star systems. "My God," Webb whispered. "Admiral, they left everything. All their forbidden weapons. All the technology they were too afraid to use. How much are we talking about, Doctor?" Webb walked through the chamber, counting the containment units. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Each one held a weapon or device that the Confederation had deemed too dangerous for normal use. Things that could destroy planets, bend time, or tear apart the fabric of reality itself. "Enough to fight a war against gods," Webb said quietly. The exploration of Research Station Omega took 3 weeks. Webb worked alongside teams of human scientists and their alien allies. Resonance of deep waters proved especially helpful, its harmonic analysis capable of understanding alien technology in ways that human computers could not match. The station's archives told a disturbing story. For thousands of years, the Confederation had been collecting dangerous weapons and technologies from extinct civilizations, things too powerful or unpredictable to be used safely. They had stored them all here, in a secret facility far from inhabited worlds, hoping they would never be needed. "The Architect's Reality Warping Engine," Dr. Sarah Kim read from a data tablet, standing next to a device that looked like a giant metal flower. "According to these files, it can change the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area. The architects used it to build their impossible cities, structures that shouldn't be able to exist." "What happened to the architects?" asked Lieutenant Commander Torres, the expedition's military liaison, extinct for 10,000 years. "They tried to use this device to make their entire homeworld immune to the laws of thermodynamics. It worked for about 6 months, then reality snapped back. The whole planet just stopped existing," Webb shuddered. Every device in this station had a similar story. Weapons that had destroyed their creators. Technologies that had ended civilizations. The Confederation had collected them all, studied them, and then locked them away because they were too dangerous to use, but the Devourers were coming, and humanity was desperate enough to try anything. "Dr. Webb," came a new voice over the communicator. "Dr. Elena Vasquez." The expedition's an archaeologist, sounded excited. "You need to come to Archive Section 7 immediately." Webb found Vasquez in a chamber filled with crystalline data storage units. Each crystal was the size of a person and glowed with soft internal light. Resonance of deep waters was there too, its body cycling through rapid color changes as it interfaced with the crystals. "What did you find?" Webb asked. "The personal research?" "Notes of High Archivist Zexthal," Vasquez said. "He was the Confederation's leading expert on the Devourers. Dr. Webb, they've encountered them before. Not this group, but others like them. This isn't the first time the galaxy has faced this threat." Webb felt his heart racing. "What do the records say?" Resonance of deep waters spoke, its voice creating harmonics that translated complex information directly into Webb's mind. "The Devourers are ancient beyond measure. They have consumed 17 galaxies over cosmic ages. Always the same pattern. They awaken, they feed, they move on. But twice in the past, they were stopped. How? The first time, a machine civilization called the Eternal Builders created weapons that could damage the Devourers directly. They fought a war that lasted 10,000 years and ended in mutual destruction. The second time, a species called The Weavers discovered how to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They fought the Devourers on planes of reality that normal matter cannot touch. Webb studied the crystal data storage units. Each one contained petabytes of information about previous galactic civilizations, their weapons, their tactics, their ultimate fates. Do we have the technology to build what the Builders built? Some of it, Vasquez said. The Builders' dimensional cannon is in Storage Bay 12. So is their quantum disruptor array, but Dr. Webb, these weapons, they require massive amounts of energy, and they're incredibly dangerous to operate. How dangerous? Resonance of deep water's color shifted to deep red. The Builders' final battle logs indicate that 90% of their operators died from dimensional feedback. The weapons work, but they consume the life force of those who use them. Webb was quiet for a long moment, thinking, weapons that could hurt the Devourers, but only at the cost of the people using them. It was a terrible choice, but it might be the only choice they had. What about the Weavers' technology? He asked. More complex, the crystalline being replied. The Weavers modified their own biology to exist in multiple dimensions. They became something that was part matter, part energy, part living idea. The process was irreversible. But they could fight the Devourers? Yes, they fought them to a standstill for 3,000 years. But eventually the Weavers became so changed that they could no longer interact with normal reality. They simply faded away into higher dimensions. Webb walked between the crystal storage units, his mind racing. Two civilizations had found ways to fight the Devourers. Both had paid the ultimate price for their victories. The question was whether humanity was willing to pay the same price. We need to bring all of this back to Kepler Station, he decided. The weapons, the data, everything. Let the Command Council decide what we're willing to risk. The journey back to Kepler Station took 2 months. The Prometheus was loaded with forbidden weapons and dangerous technologies, each one carefully contained and monitored. Webb spent the time studying the ancient records, trying to understand how previous civilizations had fought the Devourers. The patterns were always the same. Conventional weapons were useless. The Devourers existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly invulnerable to traditional attacks. Only weapons that could affect multiple dimensions or alter the fundamental laws of physics had any chance of success. Kepler Station had grown enormously in the 5 years since the Great Abandonment. What had started as a small research outpost was now a massive complex housing over 2 million refugees from dozens of species. The station's central hub was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with human technology integrated seamlessly with alien systems. Admiral Kane met Webb at the docking bay. The admiral looked older than his years, worn down by the responsibility of leading humanity's desperate mission. But his eyes were still sharp, still determined. What did you find, Marcus? Kane asked as they walked through the station's corridors. Hope, Webb said, in horror. We can fight them, but the cost will be everything we are. The Command Council meeting was held in the station's main conference room. Representatives from every rescued species were present. Humans, crystallines, Zephyrians, Trents, and dozens of others. Webb presented his findings to the assembled group, explaining the weapons they had found and the price that using them would require. The Builders' weapons can damage the Devourers, he concluded, but they will kill most of the people who operate them. The Weavers' biological modifications can allow us to fight in multiple dimensions, but the process is irreversible. We would become something that is no longer fully human. Elder Windwhisper, representing the Trent refugees, spoke first. Its voice was like rustling leaves. Our people have always believed that sacrifice for the greater good is the highest honor. If these weapons can save the galaxy, then perhaps the price is worth paying. Commander Zex Alpha of the Zephyrian refugees disagreed. We fled our homeworld to preserve our species. What is the point of victory if we destroy ourselves achieving it? The debate continued for hours. Some species were willing to risk everything for a chance at victory. Others argued for finding safer alternatives. even if it meant accepting defeat. The humans were divided among themselves, with some supporting each position. Finally, Admiral Kane stood up. The room fell silent. "We didn't stay in this galaxy to play it safe," he said. "We stayed because someone had to care about the people who were left behind. If we can save them by using these weapons, then we use them, but we do it smart. We study them, we test them, we find ways to minimize the risks." "And if we can't minimize the risks?" asked Dr. Patel, the expedition's chief engineer. "Then we accept them," Kane said quietly, "because the alternative is letting everyone die without even trying to fight." Webb felt a chill run down his spine. He had expected this decision, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Humanity was going to use weapons that could destroy them. They were going to modify themselves in ways that might make them no longer human, all for a chance to save a galaxy that had already given up on itself. "I'll begin assembling research teams immediately," Webb said. "We'll need volunteers for testing. People who understand that they probably won't survive the process. You'll have them," Kane replied. Humans have never lacked for volunteers when the cause was just. Over the following months, Kepler Station transformed into a weapons research facility unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human scientists worked alongside alien experts, trying to understand technologies that had destroyed civilizations. Volunteers underwent dangerous procedures to test biological modifications. Engineers built weapons that required the life force of their operators to function. The first successful test of a builder's weapon came 6 months later. Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, a volunteer from the Terran Defense Corps, operated a miniature dimensional cannon against a captured asteroid. The weapon worked perfectly, tearing the asteroid apart at the quantum level. But Morrison collapsed immediately afterward, her life force drained by the weapon's dimensional feedback. She lived, but barely. The medical team estimated that operating the weapon at full power would kill its user within minutes. "It's not sustainable," Dr. Kim reported to the Command Council. "We can hurt the Devourers, but we can't win a prolonged war with weapons that kill our own people." "Then we don't fight a prolonged war," Admiral Kane replied. "We fight one decisive battle. Hit them with everything we have, all at once, and hope it's enough." Webb knew the Admiral was right. They could not win a war of attrition against the Devourers. Their only chance was a single, massive strike that would either destroy the ancient entities or drive them away from the galaxy. The preparations would take years. Training operators, building weapons, modifying volunteers with Weaver biotechnology. It would be the most dangerous project in galactic history. But it was their only hope. As Webb looked out at the stars from Kepler Station's observation deck, he wondered if they were making the right choice. The weapons they were building could save the galaxy, but they would fundamentally change humanity in the process. By the time they faced the Devourers, they might no longer be the species that had chosen to stay behind and protect the abandoned, but perhaps that was acceptable. Perhaps becoming something new was the price of protecting something old. The last of them still breathed, and as long as they drew breath, they would fight for those who could not fight for themselves, even if it meant losing themselves in the process. Admiral Sarah Chun floated in the modified command chair of the battleship Defiance, her body no longer entirely human. The Weaver biotechnology had changed her over the past 2 years, allowing her to exist in multiple dimensions at once. She could see normal space with her eyes, but also perceive the twisted geometries where the Devourers truly lived. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "All ships report ready, Admiral," came the voice of Captain Torres through the neural link. The entire fleet was connected now, minds joined through a combination of crystalline harmonics and human technology. 200 ships crewed by beings who had volunteered to become something new. "Devourer contact in 30 minutes, reported the sensor operator. Lieutenant Kim had undergone the same modifications as Sarah. Her consciousness spread across 17 different dimensional planes. "They're moving through the Veil Nebula exactly as predicted." Sarah felt the presence of her fleet around her. Humans who had been modified with alien biotechnology. Crystalline beings who had learned to sing in harmonics that could tear space-time. Zephyrian pilots whose atmospheric flight skills translated perfectly to navigating dimensional storms. Trient engineers whose living ships could repair themselves faster than they could be damaged. They called themselves the Last Fleet, and they were about to do something that had never been attempted before. They were going to fight the Devourers. In their own realm. Remember, Sarah broadcast to all ships, we're not trying to destroy them completely. We just need to hurt them enough to make them reconsider their path through our galaxy. The weapons will work, but they'll burn out quickly. We get one chance at this. The modifications to her body let Sarah sense the approaching Devourers long before conventional sensors could detect them. They moved through space like living shadows, consuming the quantum foam that held reality together. But they were not just mindless destroyers. She could feel their intelligence, ancient and vast and completely alien. Contact, Kim announced. 3 Devourers entering normal space. Mass readings are incredible. Each one is larger than a small moon. Through the view screen, Sarah saw them appear. They looked like holes in reality, dark shapes that hurt to look at directly. Space around them twisted and bent, stars dimming as their light was absorbed into the creatures' impossible forms. "Oh. Ships, execute Formation Omega," Sarah commanded. "Remember your training. Stay connected through the neural link. If we lose contact with each other in the dimensional storms, we're finished." The Last Fleet spread out in a pattern that would have looked random to conventional military thinking. But Sarah could see it clearly in the higher dimensions. They were surrounding the Devourers in spaces that existed between normal matter and energy, cutting off their escape routes into the quantum realm. "Crystalline ships, begin harmonic bombardment," Sarah ordered. The crystalline vessels sang. Their hulls, grown rather than built, resonated with frequencies that could shatter the barriers between dimensions. The sound was beautiful and deadly, like the music of dying stars. The Devourers reacted immediately. They had been ignored conventional attacks for millions of years, but this was different. Sarah watched through her modified perception as cracks appeared in their dark forms, reality bleeding through the gaps. "They're hurt," she whispered in amazement. "We're actually hurting them, but the Devourers were not helpless. They began to fight back, sending waves of destructive energy through multiple dimensional planes. The first wave hit the modified frigate Courage, and Sarah watched in horror as the ship simply ceased to exist, erased from all levels of reality simultaneously. "Courage is gone," Torres reported, his mental voice tight with grief. "No survivors detected." "Continue the attack," Sarah commanded, though her heart was breaking. They had known the cost would be high. Trient bioships implement route pattern 7. The living ships of the Trient refugees began to change, their organic hulls flowering, open to reveal weapons that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. These were not the crude energy weapons of conventional warfare, but devices that fired concentrated life force itself. The bioenergy weapons struck one of the Devourers, and for the first time in cosmic ages, the ancient entity screamed. The sound echoed across multiple dimensions, a note of pure agony that made every modified human on the fleet convulse in sympathetic pain. "Target is wounded," Kim reported through gritted teeth. "I'm reading massive dimensional instabilities." In its structure, Sarah felt a moment of wild hope. They were winning. Against all odds, against ancient enemies that had consumed 17 galaxies, they were actually winning. Then the Devourers adapted. "Admiral," Torres called out, his voice filled with alarm. "They're changing. The wounded one is... It's learning from our attacks." Sarah watched in growing horror as the injured Devourer began to shift its form. Where their weapons had cracked its dark surface, new structures were growing. Armor made from crystallized space-time. Defenses that existed in the same dimensional planes as their attacks. "All ships, switch to secondary weapons," Sarah ordered. "Builders' cannons, full power." The human crews manning the ancient weapons knew what this order meant. The builders' cannons could punch through the Devourers' defenses, but they would drain the life force of everyone who operated them. It was a death sentence, and they accepted it without hesitation. For the abandoned, whispered Petty Officer Jackson as he initiated the firing sequence on the destroyer Relentless. For those who could not fight for themselves. The builder's cannons fired and reality screamed. Beams of pure dimensional force struck the lead devourer, tearing through its adaptive armor like paper. Dark blood, if it could be called blood, sprayed across the cosmic void. Where the alien ichor touched normal space, impossible things happened. Dead stars flickered back to life. Planets that had been consumed years ago briefly reappeared before fading away again. The devourer that had been struck fell back, its form destabilizing, but the cost was terrible. Sarah felt the lives of her crews burning out as the weapons drained them. The Relentless went dark as its entire crew died at their posts. The cruiser determination lasted only seconds longer. Weapons effectiveness confirmed, Torres reported, though his voice was growing weaker. His ship had fired 3 times, and Sarah could sense his life force flickering like a candle in a hurricane. But we're losing ships faster than we can hurt them. Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her existence. All remaining ships, concentrate fire on the wounded devourer. Ignore the other 2. We need to show them they can be killed. The last fleet poured everything they had into the injured devourer. Crystalline harmonics shattered its defenses. Bioenergy weapons ate away at its structure. Builder's cannons burned holes through its core. The ancient entity writhed and screamed, its form becoming more and more unstable. And then, for the first time in cosmic history, a devourer died. The explosion was beyond description. Dark energy sprayed across the battlefield, carrying with it the compressed matter of 1,000 consumed worlds. Where the energy touched the human ships, miraculous things occurred. Dead crew members briefly returned to life. Damaged vessels repaired themselves. For a moment, the laws of physics bent to accommodate hope itself. But the victory came at a terrible price. Of the 200 ships that had entered the battle, only 37 remained. Thousands of modified humans, crystalline beings, and alien refugees had given their lives to prove that the devourers could be killed. The 2 surviving devourers had stopped their advance. They floated in space, studying the remains of their fallen companion with what Sarah could only interpret as shock. For eons they had been unstoppable. Now they had learned fear. Sarah opened a communication channel, broadcasting on frequencies that the devourers could understand. Her modified consciousness reached across dimensional barriers to touch the alien intelligences. "We are the last fleet," she said, her words carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "We are the ones who stayed behind when all others fled. We are the guardians of the abandoned, the protectors of the weak, the voice of the voiceless. You have shown us that you can be killed. We have shown you that we are willing to die to kill you." The devourer's response came as a wave of pure thought, ancient beyond measure and filled with something that might have been respect. "Small beings," they communicated, "you fight with the fury of dying stars. You sacrifice everything for those who cannot fight. This is unexpected. Will you continue to consume our galaxy?" Sarah asked. The devourers were silent for a long moment, their massive forms rippling with internal discussion. Finally, they responded, "We are ancient. We have fed for longer than your species has existed, but we have never encountered guardians such as you. Beings who would transform themselves, sacrifice themselves, damn themselves for the sake of others." Sarah felt a flicker of hope. "Then you will leave our galaxy alone?" "We will. Consider, your actions have given us much to contemplate. We had forgotten that prey could become predator, that the hunted could become hunter. You have reminded us of truths we thought lost to time." "Consider quickly," Sarah said, though she could feel her own life force burning low from the dimensional modifications. "We have more fleets, more weapons, more volunteers willing to become what you just fought. Next time, we will not show mercy." It was a bluff, but the devourers could not know that. The last fleet was nearly destroyed, their most powerful weapons expended, their best pilots dead or dying. But Sarah projected an image of countless modified humans, ready to throw themselves into battle against impossible odds. The Devourers began to withdraw, their massive forms fading back into the quantum foam. But before they disappeared completely, they sent one final message. We go to consider your words, small guardians. But know this, we are not the only ancient hunger in the cosmos. Others will come, and they may not be as reasonable as we have chosen to be. Then they were gone, leaving only the wreckage of the battle and the 37 surviving ships of the last fleet. Sarah slumped in her command chair, her modified body barely holding together. Around her, the bridge crew worked with grim efficiency to assess their losses and coordinate rescue operations for the survivors floating in escape pods. "Admiral," Torres called from his heavily damaged ship, "Kepler Station is requesting a full report. They want to know if we won." Sarah looked out at the stars, now safe from the Devourer's hunger for at least a little while longer. Billions of refugees across hundreds of worlds would live to see another day. The abandoned children of a fleeing galaxy had been protected by those who refused to abandon them. "Tell them," Sarah said quietly, "that the last of us still breathe, and as long as we breathe, we will stand guard." The Battle of the Shattered Veil was over, but Sarah knew it was only the beginning. The Devourers had been stopped, but not destroyed. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, other ancient hungers stirred. The last fleet would need to rebuild, to prepare for new threats, to continue their impossible mission of protecting the defenseless. But for now, they had done something that 17 galaxies had failed to do. They had made gods bleed, and in doing so, they had bought time for the abandoned to live and hope and dream of better days. The price had been terrible, but the cause had been just. And for the humans who had chosen to become guardians of the lost, that was enough. 50 years had passed since the Battle of the Shattered Veil, and Admiral Sarah Chun was no longer entirely human. She stood at the edge of the Kepler Observatory, her body existing in 7 dimensions at once, watching the stars with senses that could perceive the hidden currents of space and time. The woman who had once been a simple starship captain was now something between matter and energy, flesh and thought. The Weaver modifications had continued to change her over the decades, and she had embraced each transformation willingly. Someone had to stand watch between the worlds of mortals and gods. "The morning reports, Admiral," said Dr. Marcus Webb, approaching through the observatory's crystalline corridors. Webb was old now, his hair white and his face lined with years of impossible decisions. Unlike Sarah, he had chosen to remain fully human, serving as a bridge between the transformed guardians and the people they protected. "Thank you, Marcus," Sarah said, accepting the data tablet, though she no longer needed it to see. Her modified consciousness could access the station's information networks directly. "How are our refugees settling on New Haven?" "Better than expected. The Zephyrian atmospheric engineers have created weather patterns that feel like home to most species. The trink groves are already producing food that can nourish 17 different biochemistries. The children are adapting fastest, of course." Sarah smiled, an expression that created ripples in the dimensions around her. Children, that was the miracle they had never expected. When the aliens fled the galaxy, they had taken their young with them. But the refugees that humanity had saved were building new families, new lives. Hybrid children were being born, part human, part crystalline, part trink, part Zephyrian. The galaxy was creating something entirely new. "Any word from the deep space monitors?" Sarah asked. Webb's expression grew serious. "Station Delta 7. Detected another probe last week. The same energy signature as the ones we've been seeing for the past 10 years. Someone is watching us from outside the galaxy." Sarah nodded. She had been expecting this news. The Devourers had kept their word and left the Milky Way alone, but their parting message had been clear. Other ancient powers existed in the cosmic void, and humanity's defiance had not gone unnoticed. "Have we identified the source?" Dr. Patel thinks they're coming from the direction of the large Magellanic Cloud, whatever they are. They're taking their time to study us before making contact. Sarah walked to the observatory's main window, looking out at the stars that had become her responsibility. The galaxy looked different now than it had 50 years ago. Where the devourers had consumed star systems, new stars were being born. The dark energy released when they killed the first devourer had somehow accelerated stellar formation, creating young blue giants that burned with impossible brightness. The crystalline harmonics are detecting something else, Webb continued. Resonance of Deep Waters believes there are patterns in the new star formations, as if the galaxy itself is trying to communicate. Sarah extended her consciousness toward the distant stars, feeling their quantum vibrations through the dimensional veils. Webb was right. There was a pattern, a rhythm in the stellar births that suggested intelligence. The galaxy was waking up. Schedule a meeting with the Council of Species, Sarah decided. It's time to discuss what we're going to do when the Watchers decide to introduce themselves. The Council of Species had grown from a desperate alliance of refugees into something unprecedented in galactic history. Representatives from over 300 species gathered in the Great Chamber of Kepler Station. But these were not the same beings that had been abandoned 50 years ago. The Crystalline Collective had learned to sing in harmonies that could bend space-time. The Trink Groves had grown living starships that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. The Zephyrian pilots had mastered atmospheric flight in 7 dimensions. And the humans had become something that existed between physical reality and pure thought. Elder Wind Whisper spoke first, its ancient voice rustling like leaves in an autumn wind. The new growth patterns in the outer rim suggest that our galaxy is developing its own consciousness. The Trink root networks can sense it, a vast intelligence spanning light years, thinking thoughts that take centuries to complete. Resonance of Deep Waters chimed in with crystalline tones that translated directly into meaning. Our harmonic analyses confirm this assessment. The galaxy is not just alive, it is awake. And it is learning from us, from our cooperation, our willingness to sacrifice for others, our refusal to abandon the weak. Commander Zex Prime of the Zephyrian fleet added, Our long-range scouts report that the abandoned worlds are not dead. Life is returning to planets that were consumed by the Devourers. Not the same life that was there before, but something new. Something that combines the best aspects of all our species. Sarah listened to the reports with a mixture of wonder and concern. The galaxy was transforming, becoming something that had never existed before. But transformation was dangerous. Change meant uncertainty, and uncertainty meant new threats. What about the Watchers? Asked Dr. Webb, representing the unmodified humans who still live throughout the refugee settlements. Sarah projected her consciousness into the space between stars, sensing the distant observers who had been studying them for decades. There, still watching. But I think I understand what they're waiting for, which is to see what we become. The galaxy is changing because we changed it. Our alliance, our willingness to protect the abandoned, our refusal to flee in the face of impossible odds. It's created something new, something that's never existed before in the cosmos. The council chamber fell silent as the representatives contemplated this. They had all transformed over the decades, but they had not realized that their transformation was changing the galaxy itself. Then we must be ready, said Captain Torres, now commanding the rebuilt fleet that protected the refugee worlds. His own modifications allowed him to pilot ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. If these Watchers are waiting to see what we become, we need to make sure we become something worth their respect. Sarah nodded. The Watch. Stations report that the stellar patterns are accelerating. Whatever the galaxy is trying to tell us, it's getting more urgent. And the Watchers are moving closer. I estimate we have perhaps 5 years before first contact. Over the following years, the Alliance worked to prepare for whatever was coming. They built new ships using hybrid technologies that combined the best of all species. They trained new Guardians who could exist in multiple dimensions. They established communication networks that span the galaxy, connecting every refugee world in a web of mutual support, but most importantly, they continued to rescue the abandoned. Even 50 years after the Great Abandonment, they still found isolated colonies, forgotten outposts, species that had been overlooked in the mass evacuation. Each rescue mission brought new knowledge, new abilities, new perspectives to their growing alliance. Sarah often thought about the irony of it all. The aliens had fled to save their civilizations, but in doing so, they had abandoned the very qualities that made civilization worth saving: compassion for the weak, willingness to sacrifice for others, the belief that every life had value, regardless of its usefulness. Humanity and their allies had kept those values alive, and in doing so, they had created something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The first contact came on a Tuesday. Sarah was in the deep meditation chambers of Kepler Station. Her consciousness spread across 17 dimensions when she felt them arrive. Ships that existed in spaces between spaces, carrying beings of pure thought wrapped in crystallized time. "Admiral," came Dr. Webb's voice through the station's communication system. "We have visitors." Sarah opened her physical eyes and smiled. "I know, Marcus. I can see them. They're beautiful." The visitors called themselves the Architects of Eternity, and they had been watching the cosmos for longer than galaxies had existed. They spoke in concepts that bypassed language entirely, projecting meaning directly into the minds of those they encountered. "We have observed your species for 50 rotations of your star," they communicated to the assembled council. "We have seen your transformation, your alliance with the abandoned, your willingness to become something new for the sake of others. What do you want with us?" Sarah asked, her modified consciousness interfacing directly with their thought patterns. "We are gardeners of consciousness," the architects replied. "We plant seeds of awareness in promising galaxies and tend them over cosmic ages. Your galaxy has grown in ways we did not expect. Your cooperation has created something unprecedented." "Which is?" "A civilization that grows stronger by caring for its weakest members. A society that improves itself by refusing to abandon anyone. You have turned the natural order on its head, and in doing so you have created a new form of existence." Sarah felt a deep satisfaction at their words. This was what humanity had chosen when they decided to stay behind. Not just survival, but the preservation of something precious that the fleeing aliens had lost. "The galaxy itself has awakened because of your example," the architects continued. "It has learned to value the abandoned, to protect the weak, to sacrifice for the greater good. You have taught an entire galactic consciousness to be compassionate. What happens now?" Webb asked. "Now you continue to grow? Continue to protect. Continue to teach the cosmos that strength comes not from abandoning the weak, but from lifting them up. Other galaxies are already beginning to change, influenced by the patterns you have created here." Sarah looked out at the stars, seeing them with senses that transcended normal perception. The galaxy was alive, awake, and learning. And somewhere in distant Andromeda, the aliens who had fled were beginning to receive strange reports about their abandoned homeworld. Reports of new stars being born, of dead worlds coming back to life, of a thriving civilization built on principles they had forgotten. Some of them were building ships to return home. "Will you help us?" Sarah asked the architects. "We will watch. We will guide when guidance is needed. But this is your garden now, your responsibility. You have become the gardeners of compassion in a cosmos that had forgotten what compassion meant." The architects departed as quietly as they had arrived, leaving behind only a sense of vast approval and the promise of continued observation. Sarah returned to her watch at the edge of known space, her consciousness spanning dimensions, her purpose clear. She was no longer Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Corps. She was something new, something unprecedented. A guardian of the abandoned, a protector of the weak, a bridge between mortals and gods. Around her, the galaxy pulsed with new life, new hope, new possibilities. The aliens had fled to save themselves, but in staying behind, humanity had saved something far more precious. They had saved the idea that every life mattered, that the strong had a duty to protect the weak, that civilization meant caring for those who could not care for themselves. The last of them still breathed, and in their breathing they had given breath to an entire galaxy. Stars were being born in patterns that spelled out messages of hope. Dead worlds bloomed with hybrid life that combined the best of all species. Children who were part human, part alien, part something entirely new played in gardens that spanned solar systems. And at the edge of it all, Sarah Chun stood watch. No longer human, but still carrying within her the best of what humanity had been, ready to face whatever new challenges the cosmos might bring, secure in the knowledge that as long as she drew breath, no one would be abandoned. No one would be left behind. The galaxy had learned to love, and love was stronger than any darkness the universe could create.